I pressed broadcast.
Oh, well,
Like an idiot. We are live, but we're doing a sound check.
A live sound check. This is awesome.
Oh, see, I need ramming in order to like make things make sense. We're just lost without it. Okay, I am on 10 seconds of silence.
okay.
Ready. What's our order?
It's me, Anais, Mr. No, not here,
And then me.
and then you.
Okay. We are live.
Let's go. This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story, once a week. I'm Gerald.
I'm Anise.
And I'm Maya.
And this week we've been reading Herding Vegetable Sheep by Ekaterina Sedia. If you haven't heard this week's story yet, please pause the podcast, read the story, and come back. Herding Vegetable Sheep tells the futuristic story of Anita, who works for an energy company, flying a special plane to herd clouds to make rain, which powers generators back on Earth. She looks at the clouds, recollecting the similar-looking New Zealand vegetable sheep plants. She tells her granddaughter, Ilona, about them, and the girl prints off some pictures to give to Anita. However, unbeknownst to her, Ilona's mother, Petra, has been using the computer to read news from outside the restricted GovNet. Downloading the pictures, which are copyrighted by the government, triggers the arrest of Ilona, and she is immediately thrown in prison. Just before she loses her job because of her connection to Ilona, Anita sneaks into the airfield compound, makes off in her plane, and rescues the girl to take her up so she can see the vegetable sheep from the sky.
Oh, that's a lovely summary. Gerald, can you turn down your bandwidth just a little bit? Cutting in and out just slightly. Turn mine down.
Right.
Anise is frozen, I think.
Well,
Anise, are you still frozen?
I turned mine down.
They're all turned down. Just top level, how did everybody or dislike it?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. It wasn't. It was supposed to be magical realism, and I don't think it was that. I don't know much about magical realism, but I don't think this was magical realism. But I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed. There's lots of different aspects to it. So, thumbs up.
How about you?
Yeah,
Anise?
I'd agree. Yeah, I'd agree. It's not magical realism, but I don't know. I feel like the main narrative is fine. What happens is okay. The themes it's hitting on are like narratives I like to think about, but it just didn't really knock it out of the park for me. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
I had problems with the beginning of the story. And by the point when meets her granddaughter, that's when the story really started for me. And I felt like the middle and end of the story were much stronger. By the end of the story, I liked it a lot, but I definitely struggled with the beginning of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? What did you struggle with?
The language. Anise knew this was coming. First, I totally agree with you guys. This is not magical realism. This is straight sci-fi. I don't normally read sci-fi, but, I went into it with an open mind. I found the beginning of the story flowery in a way that made the narrative feel choppy to my ear, difficult to follow. Then, when I listened to it, the beginning did not sound that way. So there were problems on paper that were not apparent in audio. Different experience for me. But that beginning of the story felt very choppy to me. Not really sure what was happening in a way that could have been cleared up fairly easily. And I felt like the actual story, like the start of the story, really happened right around when she meets her granddaughter anyway. So that was my main issue. How about you, Anise?
So I do have language issues, but I want to real quickly talk about why I didn't like the beginning of the story. It's different why I didn't like it. The language issues are sort of throughout for me, but so everything up until beauty is fleeting, I really didn't care for because it wasn't setting me up for the rest of the story. This isn't a story about environmentalism or environmental message. Not really. It's just sort of shoehorned in there. Then there's some stuff like with like feminist stuff like, yeah, I could look beautiful forever, but I like my wrinkles. It makes me who we are. So I'm thinking, okay, are we going to explore this sort of feminist issue about beauty and aging? No, that's not really what the story is about either. And then it ends on this sort of like, oh, beauty is fleeting. Is it though, when you live in a world where you can completely make yourself up and be youthful forever? So I think for me, the first like scene, I was just like, what does this have to do with anything else in the story? I think I might have cut out for everybody.
That first scene didn't really do anything else. What do you guys think the story was about? I mean, you bring up an important question there. Story about. For me, I have a very clear idea on what I think it's about. How about you guys?
That's a good question. I don't know. I as Anise says, I think there were issues in there, in amongst there. It was a good story. I enjoyed the story, and I enjoyed the few, the bits of the messages. I don't know. Enlighten me.
For me, the story, like the core of the story, is about the relationship between 3 generations of women. That's what the story was about for me, and that's what I liked the most about the story. It was that it was exploring a grandmother and a granddaughter who were all seeing worlds very differently and how that was affecting them. And on point of the story. And I agree with Anise that a lot of other stuff was dropped in that didn't necessarily need to be. And that possibly if it wasn't there, for me, that portion of the story. The environmental picked up on them. I definitely picked up on, government and everything, like low-hanging fruit. It's definitely got that sci-fi post-dystopian type, world feel to it, which is fine. But really strong and important to me was this relationship between these 3 women.
Yeah, I'd agree with Maya. And the resentment that happens because of different political views that affects the future, right? So there's Petra, who resents Anita for working for the government when Petra is an activist. And these are things that I'm seeing playing out in my own life and in my own family, especially like right now where everything politically is in turmoil. So for me, that was like the strength of the story. But because it was all this other stuff forced in, like you don't really get to the meat of that. And the political issue that they're arguing about, again, isn't feminism and isn't environmentalism. It's freedom of information. It's the government controlling what you can and cannot see. That's where the resentment comes in. And I wish she just would have like polished that message. Just take it to the next level of what are you trying to say here?
Yeah, because it was a very interesting message. Like the other stuff we get in tons of stories. But I would have liked to have seen that exploration between these 3 women and the freedom of information and how that affects them much more clearly. One of the things that I thought was interesting about Anita is the reason why her daughter and her issues was because she worked for the government when the government took and everything, reviews freedoms and everything. And her daughter was a teenager right at that age where you want freedom, and she'd grown up with all these freedoms and suddenly they were gone. And that's what created that. It was really subtle in the story, though, and it definitely could have been explored more. I thought that was really, really interesting. And the fact that, given that, Anita's the one, that's her daughter. Anita does not agree with the government. She works for them, but she's a rebel. See where her daughter and granddaughter get that from, too. And this whole idea of the person you are creates your children and yet becomes the thing that divides you is something that's really interesting.
Yeah. But I feel like you... Go ahead.
Yeah, carry on. Now you go.
No, I was just going to say that point that Maya made was something that I think she extrapolated, but that wasn't necessarily signaled in the story, which, again, is something authors can do where they help you extrapolate things. But I don't know. This one was like tenuous for me.
I think it was in the story. I just think the author was not focusing on it because she was too busy trying to make pretty words.
Whoa. you women today, what are you on? I think you're being very, very harsh.
Okay, defend.
You know what? I love pretty words.
I think yes, the familial relationships. That was strong. I like the fact that she'd created this world that's not too far in the distant future. I like the bit where she said it's where the entertainers were running for presidency, and 4 years later they'd made it. I thought, prescient. And I just think she'd create, in a very just 3,500 words or something. She's created this world. She's dropped some interesting things in. She's dropped a little message about the environment, and she'd lost her lungs because of the dust that they were using to seed the clouds. She'd got this sort of body regeneration and stuff going on. And I don't think she didn't work for the government. I think because she said she walked out of the energy company compound or something. So I think it's a private company that's creating energy.
I don't think so, because the government plane is the plane she's driving is a government plane. And when her daughter's like, "How are you going to fly over the prison?" She's like, "I'm allowed to. It's a government plane." That tells me she works for the government.
Okay.
But you know what? You make an interesting point about world building. And I think maybe this is why I bristle a little bit about sci-fi short stories, which is weird because sci-fi is one of the few genres that has retained the short story tradition. It takes a lot of skill to build an entire world in a short story. And I felt like she was trying to do it subtly, but her language was getting in her way. So I don't necessarily think like the beginning should have been cut. I just time with the way the beginning was written. That said, the world was built in that beginning, and I think that was important to have happen since it is a sci-fi story.
So what you're saying is that the language at the beginning was too flowery? It put you off?
It's odd because I like flowery language, but it was flowery in a way that felt choppy to me and was losing me. Let me just give you an example, because that I had to read the first paragraph twice, and I don't bristle with flowery language usually at all. But here's the beginning. I heard the clouds as I do every day. Their ghostly protuberances wrap around the wings of the plane, obscuring the blue AOL logo with their wispy fingers, and then retreat under the stream of air from the props, swirling and compacting into tight white formations that remind me of those queer plants. What were they called? Vegetable sheep. I've seen them on my vacation in New Zealand years ago, when there was a New Zealand. These plants are related to daisies, the tour guide said. It was hard to believe that. That opening paragraph to me, entire problem, like with the story. And it only happens in the beginning of the story. So much into such a short amount of sentences, and then adding flowery language on top of it that doesn't necessarily have a rhythm. It's choppy, and it takes away from the message. To me, like, do I need to know there's an AOL logo? Like, what? There's no AOL logos now. Why would there be AOL logos in the future unless AOL means something else? Is AOL like not like America Online? Like, okay, so that already like hiccuped me, because I'm like, AOL logo? Like, really? And then just wrap around the wings of the plane, ghostly protuberances. Like, there's a lot of descriptions that just don't have a discernible rhythm or voice. They just kind of feel choppy and in the beginning, whereas the descriptions later on in the story are very smooth and they have a rhythm and they sound beautiful. And when I was listening to the audio version, it sounded better in audio, but I think that was partially the narrator. The narrator was a really skilled narrator, and she was forcing a rhythm onto the story which made it much easier to listen to.
So I feel like my issue with the language was a little different. It wasn't so much the rhythm, but it's the way that she zooms in on details sometimes without a good reason. So the one where I was like, enough, was when she's going into the cafe to meet with Alona, and it's, the rain is pouring now, and my yellow slicker caves under the coalescing and dividing rivulets of rainwater, presses against my shirt, cooling my skin, crushing my chest with its weight. Really? Really? We're going to go?
Your MFA is showing.
No, listen. Yeah. And like, here's the thing though. Like, if this is a story about how there was huge droughts and this woman survived that, and for her rain is precious, then okay, she is very aware of the rain, and it probably wouldn't be crushing her chest with its weight. She would be embracing it because she loves the rain. But this is not a story about that. So I feel like if you're going to do this, like zoom in, hyper focus on a specific detail, which some authors can do very skillfully, it's usually to illuminate a greater theme. And here I felt like she was doing it to show off the skill she has, which is a skill. It is not easy to do that, to like, I can picture that very well. But it's just, if you're doing this skill and there is no purpose, I'm like, why? Like, why am I zooming in on this raindrop right now?
It's funny that you picked out that sentence. 2 sentences I didn't have a problem with. I thought it was really pretty, and I thought it added color to the environment. So, yeah,
that's funny.
In your face.
That's funny because, like I said, I don't have a problem with the rhythm of it. I completely understand it. It creates a picture in my mind beautifully. I know exactly what she is saying, but I'm just like, why? Why though? Like, that's the part where I feel like she would do that a lot.
Writer, what are we told? We're told you need to zoom in, you need to talk about the details in order to get the reader to be in the moment. Like, there's a fine line there, right?
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
You want those details so you can really feel in the moment and you can feel like you're there. But if you give too many, then you leave the reader wondering, why is rain an important part of the story?
Right, exactly. Plus, the other thing is, you know who did this well? Now, going back to many months ago, when we read Attitude Adjustment by Tim Gautreaux, I think. And yeah, and he would zoom in on anything that had to do with like rail lines, train accidents, because that's how the priest got injured, was the train accident. So anytime anything vaguely remembered rail lines, like a scar or anything like that, or the sound of a train, then he would zoom in. So it was back to that central point, or back to the central motif. But otherwise, it just happened.
So maybe there is a central motif in the water and in the rain that we're just not getting.
Yeah.
We have a woman whose job is to seed rain. She's in an environment where there's rain everywhere. So why are you seeding rain if it's pouring down rain? It doesn't look like a drought to me. Is it because there was a drought, or is it because if there's more rain, it obscures the area from outside influence? Like, why is there all this rain? She seems hyper-focused on rain. You don't keep picking out certain symbols unless there's a meaning for the symbolism. And yet, the symbolism of the rain.
Because the rain drives the whole society, because rain creates energy through these diaphragm things that she talks about. So I you know, it's pretty important. It's a pretty important job she does, and it's you know, it's important that she herds the clouds together, and if there are no clouds, that she makes clouds and brings them over the diaphragms so that they generate power. I mean, that's pretty important.
Yeah. So I agree that the purpose of the rain as creating energy doesn't happen naturally. You have to force it because of all the environmental damage that has occurred by the time the story takes place. But the central, like, narrative, like everything about the story doesn't actually have to do with it. It's like window dressing in a way. It's like, if you read the story, the presumption is, okay, we're living in this like post-apocalyptic, environmentally apocalyptic world, and this is the way that people are surviving. But the main story isn't about that. The main story is about 3 generations of women who have resentments between them because of political differences over the generations, which is why, like, one of my notes is, what does herding clouds to make rain have to do with the central point of the story? Like, that's the part that I couldn't really, you know, draw out.
2 questions. I have a lesson in my brain that I can't quite find words for, but I think I might have found a link. But my other question is, what makes you guys, I just missed something because I didn't get this environmental connection. I got the rain making energy, but I didn't see that as the result of environmental destruction. Is there anything in the story that says the environment has been destroyed?
Yeah.
I thought they were making energy because they had completely cut themselves off from other countries and other areas.
No,
It's
a
an
lot
entire sentence somewhere?
maybe there's a lot of things underwater. New Zealand's completely underwater. There's like other places that you can't even see anymore. You can't even like go to most mountain chains. Like all of this is gone. Everything's underwater. And there's one line about how they live, how there's only one continent left, and this one continent is an island, pretty big one. But
yeah, I must have just totally missed that, which kind of says something.
I can't find it at the moment, but
That's disappointing.
I must have picked.
I mean, I got like the New Zealand being underwater, but I didn't take it as like, I figured there was a war.
Here, this is the line. I found it. It's blah 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 blah. There is talking about the pictures, none that you find on GovNet, that would remind us that there is a world outside of our shrinking, reigning continent. There are no kangaroos, Colosseum, Aegean Sea, or Sahara. Yeah, things you will never know about.
Yeah, see, I read that totally differently. When I read that sentence, I took that as saying that they'd cut themselves off from those other places, that the places still existed.
Yeah,
but
it could be read that way.
And so I read that
it could be read
so differently. I'm sitting here like, I'm missing something.
But earlier she does say when there was in New Zealand, so there is some amount of
yeah, there was
destruction.
What an odd one. I was sitting here thinking about the rain and what you said, Eddie, about trying to find a connection between these hurting of the clouds to produce rain and energy and the connection with these three women. I feel like there's a connection there. I don't know if I can put words to it. You know, you're hurting these clouds and you're producing rain, which is producing energy, which is producing the next generation. And here she is, she's trying to herd her family. She's trying to get love back in some way. And her granddaughter is slipping out of her reach and she has to go rescue her. And what did she rescue her with? She rescues her with the plane that she uses to herd the clouds. I feel like the author was trying to make a symbolic line there. And I'm just not sure if it's working because I'm having a hard time seeing it. Maybe I'm just not smart enough.
I don't know. I don't see the connection, and I almost think that you're trying to look for a connection when there isn't one. I think there's. I think it's, you know, the rain and the plane and the clouds. That's the world building. That's the overall part of the story. And yes, you have the connection between the women because you have, you know, in life you have what sort of happens day to day and how you get through the day, but you have the things that really matter to you, and that's,
yeah,
you know, so one is overlaid on top of the other.
That makes sense to me.
Really? Okay.
Gerald, since you like this story, so much, was there anything about the story that you did have problems with, or is it just me and Annie is out here in left field?
No, I think I would have liked some sort of resolution to it. So it was left literally hanging in the air. You know, I don't know what happens next. So I don't really like stories that are just sort of left like that, and you don't really know what's going to go on. But other than that, I really liked it. You know, there was no massive depth. There was no, you know, I thought the language was good, and it was a fairly easy read, but there were some nice bits in there. I love the little references to other things that she dropped in. So yeah, so apart from the ending, no, not a lot really.
Now you read sci-fi, don't you?
Sometimes, yeah.
I'm trying to remember back to when I used to read sci-fi, and it seemed like the language was pretty flowery, like it had like that kind of tone to it, kind of how horror has like more flowery language a lot of times. Would you say that's the case, or do you think?
I don't think so.
This is specific for her.
I think almost cross genre. I think it's sci-fi, but it's got more. I think she's put more work into the story to create. An
He's pissed off all our
attractive-
sci-fi writers.
Yeah, I think no, I think she's done a lot to write an attractive piece to read. So yeah, I think I don't know.
See, I don't normally read sci-fi, like ever. And the thing that I appreciated the most about the story is that it was a story about people that just happened to be in a sci-fi environment. And sometimes I think the reason why I stopped reading sci-fi was because I was running into a lot of books where the book was sci-fi and the people just happened to be in there to give the writer an excuse to show everybody their wonderful world building.
Yeah.
But in this story, I feel like the people are the core of the story. And that's the part of the story that rescued it for me. The strength of those relationships, the willingness of the grandmother to go and get her granddaughter in a government plane. Like, where are they going to go now? They can't go back. Like, they're going to have to go off the island now. And you only have so much gas. Right? And the grandmother says she's going to learn how to fly. Is that like, is that saying that they're going to go someplace else and she's a strong young girl and she's going to survive? Or is that like the plane's going to die and they're going to literally fly? I
don't know.
Annie's.
Honestly,
I think that was bold.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't get a good sense of the characters really. Ilona was oddly the one that was most strongly drawn by the end of it for me. So like I feel like I don't know enough about the characters to make an educated guess as to what comes next.
Is that necessary?
No, not really. It's not. It doesn't really bother me, especially with short stories. I think there's a lot of leeway to not have really well fleshed out characters. It's always a joy when authors do. And a lot of authors who write short stories definitely have well fleshed out characters and you know who they are, right, by the end of it. But a lot of short stories we read, including on this podcast, don't do that. And you don't need to, because a lot of times in that short space, you're exploring something else. But I think because of that, I don't have a good guess.
Yeah, I felt like Anita was strong for me. Like, I got a sense of her. I really liked her. I actually liked the part of her dealing with aging, because evidently this is an environment where people don't age anymore. They can just fix it. And she's chosen to allow herself to look old, to the point where people don't want to look at her because they're kind of embarrassed and uncomfortable. They don't see people that look old anymore. And in particular, there was a line I really, really loved. I wrote it down. It says, I can only bear these artifices within me because my old skin is covering them up. And she's talking about her replaced lungs, her optimized knees, her like optimized eyes, like, and the only reason why she can deal with them is because her older skin is covering them. And I think it said something to me about how she's accepted this society, she's accepted these changes, but not fully. She is not happy about them. The only reason why she's willing to put up with them is because she's still at her core, still her. And it made me respect her as a person. It told me a lot about her. Ilona, I felt like she was really strongly drawn. Like, I'm right with you. I felt like this young, rebellious, smart, curious girl who loves her grandmother and gets between her grandmother and her mother and is willing to take on that. Said a lot. The daughter, I didn't get her. Like, for me, she was really, really weakly drawn. I would have preferred to have had a stronger daughter in exchange for more sparse description in the beginning of the story. Like, I think those descriptions needed to be made, but I felt like they were so overdone that it took away from the story. And I would have cut some of that and added more about the daughter personally if it was my story. But it's not my story, so I don't get to do that. Because I love these three women. Like, I want to know more about these three women.
Yeah. Also, the other thing, actually, it sort of bothered me that, okay, so I thought it was really cool that the grandma, that Anita, she is fine with her wrinkles. So then I thought the story was going to be about this. But like, so everyone's ashamed of her. People don't want to look at her in the cafe, but she has like a legitimate and important government job, and the security guard treats her like anyone else. Like, So is she like a leper or not? Like, is she somebody that everyone's like, doesn't want to sit with because they're kind of eccentric? Or is she fine? Because she seems totally functional at work. Everybody just sort of sees her walking through and they're like, okay. So there was just this like, I thought the story might be about that after that first scene in the cafe, and then it wasn't. So it almost felt like,
but what that did was it characterized her. That wasn't. Yeah. I think the purpose of that section was to create the character, not to be the theme of the story. But because we're coming at it so far removed, to us, that's such an anomaly that we think it has to be the theme. But really, what it tells us is that she's a little bit of a rebel, that she's not entirely comfortable with this society, you know, that she's willing to sacrifice the relationship with her daughter and her granddaughter and people's comfort in order to be okay in literally her own skin.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. No, I agree. It characterizes her really well, and it makes her likable, because in our world, that's normal. Older people will have wrinkles, and, you know, that's a good thing. Or a good thing, but it's acceptable. It's not like something you gawk at.
It's kind of strange that you, I don't know, I think that opening section really set up the story for me. I really enjoyed it. The second read through, I enjoyed it more than the first. It's I don't know. We're sort of missing Rami here, because it'd be interesting to get his perspective on it, to see whether it's just me or whether it's a. I don't know.
Yeah, we need our Rami.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very strange. I'm feeling put on here.
So when you read that first paragraph, it didn't hiccup for you. You just were fine with it. Even the AOL thing.
Yeah,
I was fine with the
AOL thing. Was like, what the hell?
I was fine with it, because to me it just signaled alternate universe. Like, AOL so obviously not going to still exist in the future that it's like, imagine if it did. You know?
You know what though? You're a youngster. AOL is like a distant figment of your imagination. I spent years logging into AOL, having to click out of it and bring up Netscape so I could avoid the browser.
I remember
Gerald
Netscape.
knows what I'm talking about.
I used Netscape as a youngin'.
Yeah. When you were that age, your Netscape didn't have to be a workaround. I wish I could do those modem sounds, like the modem.
It might sound like a donkey. That was terrible.
Oh, that is fantastic. So was there anything else you guys wanted to talk about this? You know, I'm looking at my notes, and I felt like, you know, it was interesting, the internal versus the external of the person and of the society. You know, the society, not only is she internally different than her exterior, but the society, the way it presents itself, is different from the way it actually is. I thought that was really interesting. What? Vegetable sheep? Is that the plant?
I looked it up. It exists.
Yeah.
Okay, because I was like, that whole description is just odd, but I guess it's an actual thing. That's interesting. Because I was too lazy to look it up. I thought it was made up. I was like, well, that can't be a real plant. I did.
It looks like cauliflower.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, well, that makes sense why they call it vegetable sheep.
Yeah, I looked it up and I'm like, why don't you just call this cauliflower? I guess it's not, but.
Oh, another instance of her flowery language that worked for me was the joy of hearing my daughter's voice was dissolved in her tears, and I didn't know what to say.
That was good. Yeah. Also, there was one observation she made about friendships that I thought was really good. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, I get a hold of Maria. She is a high school friend, and thus our relationship combines a gradual distancing with an exaggerated sense of obligation. I like that.
That was so perfect. So absolutely perfect. So are we ready to rate this thing?
Yeah. 5.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to go 5.5. I really did.
No, it's not. It's not that good, but certainly a good solid 5.
I was torn on it, and I came into the show with a 4, but I'm going to give it a 4.5. After this discussion, after thinking about it, after going over my notes, like with the exception of the beginning, I really enjoyed this story a lot. So I'm giving it a really, really solid 4.5.
Yay.
Yeah, I'm gonna come in the lowest, surprisingly, because I don't think I was the most bearish on it. But for me, it's 3.5. That's the score I came in with.
Really?
It hasn't moved. Yeah, I like it just more than neutral. Really, if 3 is neutral, I like it just.
That's a harsh criticism.
I know.
Competently written.
I know. It's just. It just felt like there's all of these like potential things for like a great theme, and it's like, okay, we're gonna do this. No, we're not. Are we gonna do this? No, we're not. What are we doing? And then what's the final message? And that really for me.
Every time it hooked you, it would let go of the ball.
Yeah.
That makes sense. For next week's story, I am resubmitting the Gopher Grapevine by, 1 second. It's in the Atlantic. It is the Gopher Grapevine by Charles Chestnut.
Okay. I'm submitting Nightfall by Isaac Asimov, your favorite.
Damn it! Why all the sci-fi all of a sudden? Like, what the heck?
Because I really liked the Isaac Asimov we read last week.
I hated it!
It was so good.
Okay.
I may boycott next week's discussion. I'm just gonna sit here
Or
and not
win.
talk
You
and
should
put
just
up my
win.
sign. No, I'm gonna put up my sign. It says like no more sci-fi. I'm just gonna sit here with the sign and not say anything.
Okay, right. Here we go. Here's the quiz, and it's all about clouds, which you'll
Great.
Yep, you'll love it. It's a great quiz, honest. Okay.
Great, Erasmus.
Okay. Firstly, I want you, Anais is first on my thing. So you have a choice between cirrus, cumulus, or stratus, and I want you to tell me which cloud I'm describing. Cirrus, cumulus, stratus.
Okay.
And it is detached, generally dense clouds and with sharp outlines that develop vertically in the form of rising mounds. Is that cirrus, cumulus, or stratus?
Cirrus?
Okay. I'm not going to tell you first. And Maya, what do you think it is?
What was the description again?
It was detached, generally dense clouds with sharp outlines that develop vertically in the form of rising mounds. Cirrus, cumulus, or stratus?
Cumulus.
Okay. And the answer is indeed cumulus.
Oh, thank God.
I always confuse them.
Yeah. Okay.
Me too.
I'll do another one. No, I won't do that. Right, I've just got 3 rounds, different things in each round. Anais, which of these is not one of the 10 common clouds as defined by the US National Weather Service? So there's 2 true ones and 1 false one. So I've slipped in. Altostratus, altonimbus, or altocumulus. Which one is false? Altostratus, altonimbus, altocumulus.
Altocumulus.
Wrong. It's altonimbus, of course.
Oh, I thought it was a trick. I'm like, Nimbus wasn't on the list before, so maybe.
Okay, Maya, which of the following is not one of the 10 common clouds? Is it cirronimbus, cirrocumulus, or cirrostratus?
Cirronimbus.
Is the correct answer. You're good on clouds.
She's not falling for the tricks.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about the clouds. I'm using my knowledge of prefixes in a desperate attempt to not read Asimov next week.
I'm just going to keep submitting.
And the final question is high cloud, which of course is cirrus, as we all know, as defined as being above a certain height from the ground. And we do it in feet because obviously get confused when we do meters. Yeah, that's right. So,
Thank you for taking us into account, Gerald. We appreciate it.
so at what height does medium cloud become high cloud? An ace.
I just have to guess a
We
number.
have to make it up? You're not going to give us an A, B,
We
and
just
C?
say a number.
The closest to the right one within the point.
30,000 feet. I don't know.
Okay. Annie's got 30,000. Yeah. Maya.
At what point does medium become
Medium
high?
cloud become high cloud. Yeah.
Well, in shows with airplanes, they always say like 10,000 feet. So I'm going to guess, and airplanes are above clouds, so 10,000.
What did you say? 10,000?
Yeah.
Well, you drew that one because the height is, of course, 20,000.
Of course. Naturally.
I don't know why you didn't get these.
You know, I came really close to saying 20, but that is hella funny.
Well, Maya wins.
Maya wins. Hooray.
Oh, thank goodness. We get to read something complicated and controversial and difficult.
Wow.
Okay. What is it reading?
I did back-to-back sci-fi. So we are reading The Gopher Grapevine. It is a short story by Charles Chestnut. It was written, I think, in 1887, and it's in the Atlantic.
Wow.
Okay. But before you go, enjoy the free web while you still can at literaryroadhouse.com and share your thoughts in the comment section. iTunes, Stitcher, and Spreaker are the closest thing to a podcast GovNet. Your reviews legitimize us in the eyes of the podcast powers that be. And if you're looking to herd all our podcasts in the cloud, check out the Literary Roadhouse Book Club and the Bradbury Challenge. And finally, help support our plane ticket expenses to New Zealand so we can bring you live reporting about vegetable sheep. You can support our podcast and total global literary coverage at patreon.com/literary roadhouse. And as always, share this podcast with the badass pilot grandmas in your life. Until next time, read a good story. The things I make up.
Your mom is so going to be the pilot badass grandma when you have kids, like straight up. Like your mom is like right up there.
Yep. This is episode 90, isn't it?
Oh. Yeah. Crazy, huh?
What are we doing for our 100th episode?
We already kind of discussed it slightly. Let's get on there.
That was okay, but that's a separate project. That's not the 100th episode.
Oh. I don't know. You ask me for ideas when I'm on air? I thought that was going to be like the lead up to the 100th, like reading like multiple stories by one author and then like have like the 100th. No, that was going to be the 2-year anniversary episode.
Right.
We have 2 major milestones in a row.
Yep. This is what I'm saying.
Rami overslept.
Of course he did.
Standard.
Do you guys want to reread the first story we ever read?
That's what I'm
See
thinking.
If it changed?
Mm-hmm.
That's an idea.
Wasn't it
the story of an hour?
Story of an hour. Yeah, let's reread that.
Yeah.
I think that would be a really cool 100th episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okie dokie.
Okay. Have
Ciao.
fun.
Let's get the Bradbury.
Bye.
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 Bye bye.